during the other 6 months of the year, they're like going ham. Like, and I say going ham, I mean like. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm Anastasia, known as the Black Bookworm. First and foremost, thank you so much for being here. But today, I don't know why I said but. Today we are going to be doing the mid-year freak out tag. I don't know if you're supposed to do this if you haven't like finished your reading goal, because I'm not really freaking out, but bear with me. If we are supposed to be freaking out, just pretend like, oh my god. Anywho, let's just get started. I'm coming to you guys as someone who does not like to make choices about things. For instance, I don't have a favorite color. So like just sitting down and narrowing these to like one book was extremely hard. A lot harder than it should have been. That's neither here nor there. I just wanted to preface this with that, because if you see that I have more than one book for an answer, it's because I did my best. And there were times where I could not, like, I don't know, I couldn't narrow it down. So with that being said, let's get started. And yes, I write stuff down, so if you see me looking down, that's why. I don't even know if you can see this I'll learn later if y'all can actually see this notebook in the shot. But anywho, the first question is the best book that you've read so far. The best book that I've read this year is Restore Me by J.L. Seegers. Oh my gosh. I devoured that book. Like, it was so good. It was so good. I have not had that feeling of just like pure euphoria reading a book. But this book, top to bottom, I loved it. It was a book that was so good that I finished it and I was just like in a reading slump after, because I was just sad it was over. Which, hindsight, I probably should have just went back and like reread it, but I loved that book. I loved everything about that book. I gave it 5 stars. I have no regrets, and I highly recommend it to anybody. Even if you don't read romance, I just thought it was so beautiful, such a beautiful story about a widow who is finding love again. So check it out. The best sequel I've read so far. I thought I hadn't read that many, but I actually looked back and I read quite a few. And so I narrowed it down to 2. The first one is To Be Loved, and it is the Things Unseen series. It's by Kayla Shawn. And I was surprised because I didn't really care for the first book. Not that the first book was bad. It just wasn't my cup of tea. But I loved the second book. It felt like, because it followed a new couple, but it just felt like the writer had elevated her writing style. And that was why I loved the book so much. The main characters were very relatable. Y'all, I barely remember character names. So if I'm sitting here like the main character, the hero, the heroine, it's because I can't remember a name. Please don't judge me. But I loved the main character. It was nice to see like a book written about a woman who is like a workaholic. Look up triggers, because she's gone through trauma, and trying to navigate like what that means for her as a grown woman. like experiencing trauma as a little girl in an environment that was supposed to be safe, and having to, you know, come to terms with that and seek help, professional help. Um, I loved it. I loved it so much. And then Twisted Games by Anna Huang. Um, mm, I just loved reading about. I didn't realize I liked like the. That's so funny. These are both like bodyguard romances, but I didn't realize I liked that until this year. I don't know. Something about a protective man is just like, oh my goodness. Um, yeah, that's when I learned that about myself. So I put that down as well. uh, the next one is new releases that you haven't read yet, but you want to. Technically, it's a new release because it came out today. Twisted Lies. It's the fourth book in the Twisted series by Anna Huang. Um, and The Lifestyle by Taylor Han. I think that's how you pronounce it. I think we all know. If you don't know about the Twisted series, and well, let me not, because a lot of people aren't on social media. Um, the Twisted series is a super popular series about a group of 4 best friends, and you get to follow each best friend. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the last book in the series. But they're friends from college, and like time has passed. So it's nice to see them like growing up, and it's just good. I like it. I like it a lot for the most part. That third one, I think we all have the same issue with the third book, so I really hope nothing like that happens in the fourth. Um, and then The Lifestyle is about, I think it's about a couple that, sorry y'all, my knee itches. I get bug bites. I think it's about a couple who opens their marriage because people think they have like this perfect life and they don't. So they open their marriage up, which is an interesting concept. As a married woman, it's a very interesting concept, so I want to read about it. Let's see. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Y'all, this might not even be my most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I just don't really know like when books are released because I'm not in the throes of it like that. If a book gets a lot of popularity and people have read it, then I'll read it as well. Like if it's on Kindle Unlimited, then I'll just check it out, read it, and that'll be that. So this is like the only book that I know that's coming out, and that's only because if y'all read books on Kindle Unlimited, and maybe they do these on other devices as well, but like you'll get like an extended epilogue, but that's if you sign up for a newsletter. And so I did that to get an extended epilogue for like one of the books in this thrill series by S. Massery. It's a reverse harem. That's something I learned about myself this year, that I like reading those kinds of books. But the book is called Rebel by S. Massery. So I don't want to be like, I'm very excited to read that book because I actually read the first. I think there's only 2 out so far. Yeah, that's the third book. I read the first 2. The first one, I was like, this is not good. Finished it and immediately read the second one. And I was like, this is a lot better. That first one was trash. And for some reason, I was like, yes, let's just keep going. Like a little raccoon. But yeah, that's that. Anywho, the biggest disappointments. I'm going to preface this by saying I have never written a book in my entire life. So I want to give credit to people who have, did I say read? I've never written a book in my entire life. So I want to give credit to authors that have done that. The amount of work that it takes, the amount of yourself that you're putting out there, something that you're passionate about and letting the world see it, and then the world judging it for what it is or is not, has to be hard. So I just want to preface this by saying I fully respect the process of writing books. These were just disappointments to me. We'll leave it at that. Okay. The Perishing by Natasha Lyonne. I meant Natasha Dion. Sorry. And I wanted to love it. I wanted to love it so badly. It just felt like there were so many. It's about a time traveler, like this Black woman who time travels. Does she time travel? It just keeps jumping timelines. So I don't know if it's that she time travels or that she just remembers each past life. But it felt like so much of the actual plot, like the content of the plot, was given to us in the very last chapter. And like the reason why these people were hunting her was kind of revealed at the very end. Which I can understand for like, oh, why do these people like want her? What's so special about her? And trying to figure that out. But like, if you don't even know the motive of the villain and you don't really understand who the villain is, it's just kind of like, what are you getting from the book while you're reading it? And all you get is a lot of surface level stuff. There's a lot of touching on like how racism has affected a lot of like the institutions and stuff that we have today. And you see from like poor infrastructure, killing people, to like police violence, and all of these things are very important, but they were just touched on. And it didn't make sense as to why these things were included in the book. And it felt very like preachy. And as someone who is obviously a Black woman, I'm like, if we're going to talk about this, we need to talk about it in a way that fully exposes what's going on. And I liked that she was mentioning all these things, but I was like, they're not doing anything to be well received by someone that might not be in the community. And I just wish that we would have just went further into that a little bit more. Because going, like, you jump timelines throughout the book. And when she was in the future, I was like, I don't understand the point of this. It's just that she's, like, on trial and going to jail. And for what, I really don't even remember. I read this in February, so. Oh, I was so disappointed. And then the other books that I did not care for that were a big disappointment this year were the Wildflowers duet. The Confidence of Wildflowers and the Resurrection of Wildflowers by Michaelia Smeltzer. I thought it was Michaela, but the way it's spelled, I'm not sure. It's an age gap romance, which I'm a little iffy on that trope anyways. Just because a lot of people like to write it when the girl is like 17, 18. And that's gross. But this book was a lot of tell and not show. And I don't like that. I want you to show me what is going on so I can come to the conclusion of like, oh, these characters are in love and I see it and it is this great big love. This book tells you so many times that they have the biggest love of the universe, like the best love this universe has ever seen. Like nobody's love is a love like ours. And if the main characters keep having to say that over and over and over again, one, why? Two, is it believable? If you keep having to tell me stuff over and over and over again, I'm like, why are you not convinced that it's the world's greatest love? Why are you telling me so much? So that was the issue that I took with that book. And also, I was like, it's hard to write a sequel about the same characters when you did not set them up very well with a strong foundation. The second book, I feel like it would have been a lot better had the first book been stronger. But because I'm leaning on the plot and storyline and the character development from the first book, because it's a continuation of their story, it was just not it. So those were the disappointments. The biggest surprise that I read this year, Credence by Penelope Douglas. Y'all, I did not know that. I learned some things about myself reading that book. I was like, what's wrong? If you have not read it, it is about a girl that goes to live with her step uncle and step cousins. And they live in Colorado, like up this crazy mountain. And during the winter, they're like stuck up there for 6 months. And so like during the other 6 months of the year, they're like going ham. Like, and I say going ham, I mean like sexual going ham. Because it's like we gotta stock up, like just like a bear who's about to hibernate. You know, you gotta eat all the food that you can get before you pass out for however long. Same thing. They're about to not have access to vagine. So yeah. So anyways, she goes there to move. She goes to live with them after her parents lovingly unalived themselves together. She had a pretty neglected life anyways. So like I said, it was just a journey of self-discovery whilst reading that book. And I know a lot of people are just kind of like, you either love it or you hate it. I loved it. The next question is your favorite new author, debut or new to you? Pretty sure this was her debut novel, and she had a novella that was out. But J.L. Seegers, that woman can write a book. Oh my gosh. And this is all coming from like someone that loves romance. So I read her books by recommendation. These are not books that I found on my own. The first book was recommended to me by a friend. She read the novella and she was talking about it on Instagram, and I was like, girl, what is this? And she was like, girl, read it. It's called Again. And so I read it and I was like, holy crap. I like how she writes. I wish she would write like a longer book. She did. I read it. The second book that, the actual book by her, not the novella, the book, is Restore Me, which, as we saw, that was the best book that I read this year. The reason why I read it is because I made a TikTok where I started a series, which was a TikTok taste test series, and I wanted to get recommendations of books that had like full storylines, plots, character development, like conflict resolution, all of that, but was also full of like horizontal hugging, if you know what I mean. I wanted books that were just like smutty, nasty, but also storyline. Because if you want like a smutty, nasty book, you can find that. But it's hard to find one that actually has like a good plot. I was like, I like to read. I just also like to read about a little, sexy while I read. So this was recommended a lot in that. I was like, okay, well, geez. I guess I'll check it out. It was the first book I read in the series. And what a way to start that series, you know? What a home run out the park. I loved it. So shout out to Miss J.L. Seegers. Newest fictional crush, Dominic Alexander from Restore Me. That man is fine in my mind. Oh, hoo hoo. We just, you know? Why am I blushing? He was just so attentive. Oh my gosh. Fictional men written by women will always be top tier, and Dominic Alexander has my heart, soul, body. Fictionally, of course. Yeah. Just read, if you don't get anything else from this video, read Restore Me. Please and thank you. Newest fave character. My newest favorite character, which is interesting because I was not a fan of the book, but I think that's because it was well, one, it was categorized as a romance, but it's not really a romance. Like, you have a romantic element, but I felt like there was so much more that was trying to be discussed and that had relevance. But then there was also a lot of stuff that was talked about and characters that were talked about that I was like, I didn't need to hear about them. They really don't move the story forward in any way, shape, or form. You just wasted a chapter. We could have talked about something else. We could have gone back to the main characters more. All that to say, wasn't a fan of the book, but I loved the characters. The main characters, I loved them. So my newest favorite character is Shane Hall. I loved him. He was just so... He is a writer who teaches English. He's 2 years sober, and he is like this enigma in the literary world. Like, oh my gosh, he's such a genius. What's going on inside his brain? Like, oh my gosh, his work is just, it should be studied, and like gets all these awards and stuff. And he was like, I wrote all that stuff when I was drunk. I don't know how to do it sober at all. And I just liked seeing a male character be vulnerable like that. I like him. And I was about to be like, I feel like I could sit down and like, can't say sit down and have a drink with him because he's sober, but sit down and have like a good conversation with him. And I just loved how he and Eva like communicated with each other, and I loved how he loved her. So yeah, he's my new fave. A book that made you cry. This book had so much, like, I'd heard so many things about it, but nobody had talked about how they had cried reading it. A Thousand Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. I sobbed for hours. I sobbed for like 2 hours. I'm not mad at the feelings that I had. They happened. They were valid. I just was not ready to have those feelings. I knew it was about two people that were childhood friends. They grew up together. I knew that the boy moved back to Sweden because his family is Swedish. Moved back to Sweden for 2 years and then comes back. And he comes back like this troubled kid that like fell into the wrong crowd, and you got to see like them navigate this new dynamic. I was not prepared to cry the way that I did. I was not prepared to sob the way that I did, but I sobbed, and I'm trying to do no spoilers, so I sobbed. Hey, so I'm currently editing, and I didn't realize that I had skipped a question, but the book that made you happy. I accidentally skipped that question. That's crazy. And believe it or not, I'm not going to say Restore Me. I could easily say Restore Me, but I won't. A book that made me happy this year was For All Time by Shanna Miles. It's YA, which is crazy because normally I do not read YA because I'm like, if we're going to be reading about romance, I need some smut. But this book was so good. It was so beautiful. And it made me believe in love in a way that was like, I don't know. It was just like a very deep, fulfilling story. So that is a book that made me happy. Okay, back to the video. Most beautiful book you've bought or received this year. You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Okoyeke Emeze. That book is so pretty. Oof, my gosh, it's such a vibrant orange. I can't wait to read it. I bought it. If you watched my summer TBR video, you know I bought it just because it was pretty. A pretty book with a pretty black person on it. I'm gonna buy it. So I'm excited to read it. I've seen a lot of like I've seen a lot of people don't like the main character, so I'm excited to see like where I fall in that realm. Let's see. And the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? If you have not already, I posted a summer TBR video. Check that out because I don't want to repeat those books. But those are the books that I'm like focusing on right now. Like I said, I've already met my reading goals, so I don't really feel the need to read books by the end of the year. But these are books that I want to have read by the end of the year. So check that out. And then I have a few more. I want to read A Little Life. I think that's going to take a certain amount of bravery and courage to do. And I'm not in the space to do that yet. And I hope to be able to do that before the year is up. If I don't, it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I want to. Yolk. It's out of my comfort genre. It's a book about two sisters, and I want to try. I want to try because I devour romances like crazy. Like, I can devour them like crazy. And I want to be able to do that with all types of books. So, you know, we're working on it. Love in Other Words. I bought that. It was a blind date with a book. So if you don't know what that is, it's when you go to the bookstore and they have like books that are wrapped up and you get to read like little sentences about it and you decide whether or not you want it. So you can't judge the book by the cover. And so that's how I got that book. So I want to read it. And lastly, His Only Wife. That book is just very pretty. Yet again, I am a sucker for buying a pretty book with Black people on the cover. So I'm excited to read it just because it is pretty. So I hope it's as good as it is pretty. Because if so, it'll make it a phenomenal book. But that concludes the mid-year freakout tag. Like we said, I'm not really freaking out. It's kind of smooth sailing. Like, I'm proud of how much I read this year. If I don't read another book, I'm very proud of how much I read this year. And that's really all that matters, you know? So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you like this, please actually like the video. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications. I have an Amazon wish list. If the spirit moves you. No, in all seriousness, thank you guys so much for watching and being here. I sincerely appreciate you. Will we have a thumbnail? I'm not freaking out. What if we don't freak out in this thumbnail? What if we're just calm, cool, and collected? What if we just like look at my nails? Freak out. Can you tell I'm a 90s baby? That's that. Hopefully one of these is a good thumbnail. We'll see. But yeah, it is what it is. Bye. Go read something. Go read Restore Me. Go read Restore Me. Bye.